Welcome to the Chrisman Commentary Daily Mortgage News Podcast. I'm your host, Robbie Chrisman. Topics on today's episode include affordability, or lack thereof, my interview with Blue Sage Solutions, Carmine Cacciavillani, on modified workflows versus true artificial intelligence, and will CPI data change the Fed rate cut next week? Today's podcast is brought to you by nCino, makers of the nCino Mortgage Suite for the modern mortgage lender. nCino Mortgage Suite's three core products, nCino Mortgage, nCino Incentive Compensation, and nCino Mortgage Analytics, unite the people, systems, and stages of the mortgage process into a seamless end-to-end solution embedded with data-driven insights and intelligent automation. See how nCino can support a homeownership journey that your borrowers and your team will love at nCino.com. Affordability, or lack thereof, has been a major topic for the last few years, and with rising insurance costs, HOA fees, rates in the sixes, and increasing property taxes, you can understand why. FHFA Director Bill Pulte announced a review of loan-level price adjustments, which are created by looking at the historical performance of loans with certain attributes, to potentially reduce fees for homeowners and buyers. The review could impact conventional mortgage fees, offering relief amid past controversies over fee structures. Anything helps, right? Are you impressed I made it this far into the podcast without mentioning AI? Well, since we can't seem to have any discussions without the mention of artificial intelligence anymore, I asked the computers that be what in market trading parlance would be the opposite of a dead cat bounce, which is a brief false recovery during a larger downtrend. It replied that it would be something like a bear trap, which we saw yesterday. Why? Well, there was a generally positive showing from global equities and a sharp rally in the price of oil after the U.S. Treasury sanctioned two major Russian energy companies. Additionally, it was announced that President Trump will meet with Japan's Prime Minister Takaichi on Tuesday and China's President Xi next Thursday, both positive developments for global trade. Potentially. We also learned yesterday that U.S. existing home sales rose 1.5% in September to an annual rate of 4.06 million, their highest level since February, while inventory grew slightly to 1.55 million units, according to the National Association of Realtors. Year over year, sales were up 4.1%, and the median home price increased 2.1% to $415,200, marking the 27th straight month of price gains. While rates may ease slightly as the Fed cuts the overnight Fed funds rate, they're expected to stay around 6.2% to 6.4% over the next 2 years, likely keeping many homeowners from selling and capping further housing market recovery. Mortgage rates did fall to new or near year-to-date lows in the latest Freddie Mac Primary Mortgage Market Survey. Yes, for the week ending October 23rd, the 30 and 15-year mortgage rates both fell 8 basis points to 6.19% and 5.44%, respectively, with the former the lowest since last October and the latter just 3 basis points off the year-to-date low. From a year ago, rates are 35 basis points and 27 basis points lower. We're just a couple days away from the Fed's next meeting, and next week's expected quarter-point Fed rate cut will be viewed as dovish or hawkish, largely depending on the September CPI report. While 2 more 25 basis point cuts are widely anticipated, a stronger-than-expected core CPI could prompt the Fed to pause rate reductions early next year, though a modest upside surprise would still align with continued easing. Persistent inflation in core services could limit how rates ultimately go in 2026, despite market expectations for a 3% bottom. For now, uncertainty, exacerbated by the potential for a prolonged government shutdown and limited new economic data, supports a more dovish stance, as investors and policymakers remain cautious about committing to major moves amid an uneven post-shock recovery and fading economic resilience. For today's interview, I wanted to welcome back to the show Blue Sage Solutions, Carmine Cacciavillani, to talk about modified workflows versus true artificial intelligence, and how their recently announced partnership with Movement Mortgage is where the mortgage industry is headed. He's founder and president of Blue Sage, with over 40 years of experience in the creation of complex software-based business solutions, including over 3 decades of it spent in the mortgage industry as a solutions provider. In 2011, he founded Blue Sage Solutions. Using advanced technology stacks with cloud and mobile, Blue Sage provides end-to-end loan origination platforms for the consumer lending industry. Let's start with the big news here from Blue Sage, and that is that Movement Mortgage is now powered by y'all. Rather than me trying to come through a press release to provide details, Carmine, just what's this mean? Why is it such a big deal? What are you most excited about? Those sorts of things.
Well, obviously, Movement is one of the leaders in the industry. It's powered by Blue Sage, but there is a tremendous amount of integrations. Movement has spent a great deal of time and effort, reworking their entire mortgage process infrastructure. So they've got components that they've built that we interface with. So it's not just Blue Sage, it's other partnerships that were created. But I think obviously Movement is one of the leaders in the retail space, and we're been very fortunate to work with them and get them to the next generation of product so they can close loans faster, be more nimble. We've got a solution that does a, probably more than most solutions, and we're not really just an LOS. And I think that's a thing that people say, oh, Blue Sage, you're an LOS, but we've got a point of sale. We have a TPO for correspondents, for brokers, and we have consumer facing stuff and a servicing solution right now, interim servicing, eventually full solution. So I think we've got a solution for a great portion of the market. And I think that, Movement saw that. That's how we kind of came to terms. But again, there's a tremendous amount of integration to the Movement.
Movement's a big player, and I could name several others, but people will know most of them off the top of their head. Where does Movement see the industry headed? And I don't want you to put words in their mouth, but how you can discuss how it ties in with your multifaceted solution. Where does Movement see the future of mortgage, and why did that make for a good synergy?
Like anybody, they want to see as much automation as possible. But I think in phase one, it was just to get onto a newer platform, right? Something where it's easier for people to process loans. It's easier for people to do disclosures, a lot of automation. But going forward, there's a lot more stuff on the drawing board, artificial intelligence for underwriting, income analysis, settlement agent portal. There's ADR, OCR. So there's a lot of stuff still coming. But I think the first thing was to get, off of the platform that they've been on for a while and get onto, a newer platform that has easily accessible data in and out of the application.
Well, let me beat a dead horse here a little bit, if I will. Where do you see the market going? Where do you see the industry going? You've been able to be a part of it through various market cycles. Hopefully now we're on the upswing, but where we head, I mean, obviously we've never had technology like this before.
Yeah. I mean, I think the technology is, obviously a driver, but I think until we really change in many areas, we still have not really truly progressed, right? We still do ADR and OCR. We still sell loans and people buy loans based upon documents, which is craziness at this point in time, right? I've been in this industry 40 years and we're still talking about ADR and OCR. And really, I think the next thing that would really totally change the industry is if Fannie and Freddie said, guess what? The only way we'll buy your loans is if everything is 100% digital, right? If that happens, then it changes everything. It makes things a lot quicker. We're not relying on people stare and compare, right? Because no matter how good your ADR and OCR and AI is, it's not going to be 100%. So if it's not 100%, what is it? So the idea is we got to get to the point where we're really transferring electronic data as opposed to looking at documents. And then all the AI stuff is definitely going to help out. There'll be a lot more automation, but we're automating things that I have a whole article that I haven't completed yet. But the idea is we've got to make the mortgage process simpler, right? We can't just automate a very difficult process. We need to make it simpler. There shouldn't be, in my mind, different title insurance for every different part of the country, and recording a title or a mortgage or a note, you shouldn't have to pay by page. So these are all little things that are just really nuisance, and we got to get rid of it. We got to make it simple for someone to apply for a loan, get approved for a loan, close a loan, and get that loan to the servicer, right? We got to make that very, very easy. And today it's littered with tremendous amount of legal stuff. There's a cost associated with all this stuff. The lenders have to spend a tremendous amount of time making sure that everything is perfect. And that basically drives up the price to the consumer, right? If we can simplify the process, come up with a standard set of things. Why should recording fees in County A be different than County B? That was fine 50 years ago, but today people don't stamp things. They shouldn't. And does it really matter if it's 14 pages or 12 pages? we just got to take a look at the entire mortgage process and see where it kind of can be changed as opposed to just automate what we have.
Well, you opened a can of worms here with bringing up AI, so I'm gonna dive in if that's
Sure.
okay with you. And I'm here at MBA Annual. I think 70% of the sessions are about AI in some form or another. And if 2024, I guess late 2023, but 2024 was kind of the year of hyping AI. AI has realized a decent bit of potential at this point. And from your perspective, before I ask more pointed questions, where are we in terms of AI's real capabilities as it pertains to the mortgage industry currently here at mid-October, late October 2025?
I would say we're just, starting to scratch the surface, because I think there's a lot of stuff that, depending on your expertise, you either know or don't know. But we started looking at AI in 2022, and we created a model to decision loans for home equities and second mortgages, right? Because there was no one who was going to give you an approval or a decline in that, because Fannie and Freddie don't do that. So we started that in late 2022. I think there's a tremendous amount of capability still there, and we're in the infant stages, is all I'll say. And some of the things are really AI, and some of the things are really just modified workflow. When the models make the decisions and you don't have to tell them what to do or follow a map, then it's truly AI. Again, we're still in the infant stages. If you walk by almost, I don't know how many booths, everybody has something AI.
Yeah.
Right? And you don't know if it really is or it isn't at this point in time.
How can people discern if something is truly AI, or I guess what is truly AI in the mortgage industry? What versus how can you tell if it's modified workflows, or what do you still see as modified workflows masquerading as AI?
Unless you really, do a deep dive, I don't think you would be able to tell, right? Because you don't know if the workflow is following a very rudimentary tree or it's, really using a true AI model. It's impossible to really tell from execution. But if you do a deep dive, then you'll find out, how easily can something happen, right? If you can really write something, using AI, it can kind of do the things itself. A great example of that is what I discussed with decisioning, right? You can give it more and more and more loans and data and data and data, and it can then make decisions based upon that data, as opposed to a lot of things today are an agentic AI, tell me how many loans I have now. That could either be true agentic AI or it may not be. You don't know what's going on under the covers. But where you're doing, machine learning, you have data, you can say that, okay, this loan was approved or declined, and here are the reasons why. And you have 10,000, 20,000, 100,000, a million loans. The system is learning and then can make, the appropriate decision on a loan.
Maybe I'm hearing this incorrectly, but if we're at that point where you can't tell the difference between modified workflows and AI, do you really need AI if modified workflows can do basically the same task?
I think long-term you do, because you don't want to be constantly modifying the workflows. The idea is to make the models smart enough that they can figure out what they would need to do next, as opposed to following a workflow. If I said lower than 600, automatically decline them, but then someone says, you know what, I want that to be, lower than 590. You don't want to be able to do that. There's got to be a way to do that with AI. I'm not an AI expert by any stretch of the imagination, but I have a team of people who know it pretty well. So I think, you've got to be able to tell that, make a model that is smart enough and can learn and understand the problem that it's trying to solve. I think when it knows the problem that you're trying to solve, I think a lot of people want to still use AI as if they're programming. That's the biggest challenge. Whereas if you know the problem you're trying to solve, present that problem to the model and let the model come up with a solution. Now you've got to really present enough of the story so that it understands what it's supposed to do. Then it'll figure out what it should do.
Certainly sage advice. You mentioned that that's what's next for the industry. What's next for you and Blue Sage? Focusing on implementation with movement, I'm sure, is a thing. But when it comes to staying at the forefront or the vanguard of AI and technology in the mortgage industry?
Well, we're going to try and continue. One of the things that we have is an agentic sales agent. So the idea really for us is to try and make everybody who's a sales agent, let's say if you have, sales agents who are A's and some who are B's and C's, and maybe even lower, the idea is to make everybody at least a B and maybe an A. And the AI can actually do that. So I think that that's really where we're going to be focusing in on, and that'll be true of, throughout the process. But to give you an idea in what we do, many of the other systems that we compete against, they have a disclosure department. People who use Blue Sage never have a disclosure department. That is automatically done. So you don't have to do anything. Now, is that AI? No, but that's workflow and it does it. But now we're going to make it a little bit smarter so that it can be, less tweaking and more knowledgeable.
I certainly wish you the best of luck. I hope you had a good conference at MBA Annual, and I'm sure we'll have you back on the show soon. So thank you very much.
All right. Thank you.
Today's economic calendar started with that aforementioned and previously delayed September CPI report. The headline came in up 0.3% and up 3.0% year over year versus expectations. It would increase 0.4% month over month and 3.0% year over year versus 0.4% and 2.9% previously. With the core up 0.2% versus expectations of increasing 0.3% month over month. But it did come in 3.0% year over year versus 3.1% expected, same as in August. Later today brings preliminary October S&P global PMIs, final October Michigan sentiment, and though no Fed speakers are scheduled, the Fed will hold an open meeting to discuss the proposals to enhance the transparency and public accountability of the Fed's stress testing framework and scenarios. Earnings also continue from Wall Street. After the consumer price data, agency MBS prices are slightly improved from Thursday's close, the 2 years yielding 3.45 and the 10 years yielding 3.97 after closing yesterday at 3.99%. Let's wrap up with a joke and some housekeeping. I went to the cemetery yesterday to lay some flowers on a grave. As I was standing there, I noticed 4 grave diggers walking around with a coffin. 3 hours later, and they're still walking around with it. I thought to myself, they've lost the plot. Thanks again to nCino for sponsoring this week's podcast. nCino's Net Mortgage Suite for the modern mortgage lender includes 3 core products: nCino Mortgage, nCino Incentive Compensation, and nCino Mortgage Analytics, uniting the people, systems, and stages of the mortgage process into a seamless end-to-end solution embedded with data-driven insights and intelligent automation. To learn more, visit nCino.com.